Hi, this is Dr. Gregory Sadler. I'm a professor of philosophy and the president and founder of an educational consulting company called Reason.io, where we put philosophy into practice. I've studied and taught philosophy for over 20 years, and I find that many people run into difficulties reading classic philosophical texts. Sometimes it's the way things are said or how the text is structured. But the concepts themselves are not always that complicated, and that's where I come in. To help students and lifelong learners, I've been producing longer lecture videos and posting them to YouTube. Many viewers say they find them useful. What you're currently watching is part of a new series of shorter videos, each of them focused on one core concept from an important philosophical text. I hope you find it useful as well. One of the centerpieces of Thomas Nagel's article, What Is It Like to Be a Bat?, is, as you can well imagine, trying to figure out what it would be like to be a bat. And as it's going to turn out, Nagel's going to say, in certain respects, we can kind of reconstruct that, but there's good reasons to think that what he's calling the subjective experience or conscious experience of what it is like to be a bat from the bat's perspective is something that ultimately remains, inaccessible. We might even say mysterious to us, although we can say that unless we're going to say no animals have conscious experience, there is what is it like to be a bat? There is a subjective point of view. And why is he bringing up bats? Well, because they're going to be a really useful example. He says, I assume we all believe that bats have experience. After all, they're mammals. There is no more doubt that they have experience than that mice or pigeons or whales have experience. I've chosen bats rather than wasps or flounders because if we travel too far down what he calls the phylogenetic tree, people gradually shed their faith there's experience there at all. But, mammals, birds, bats seem to combine elements of both, although they are mammals. And we think that they have conscious experience, right? So he says bats are more closely related to us than, say, flounders and wasps, but they present a range of activity and sensory apparatus that is so different from ours that the problem I want to pose is exceptionally vivid. So we could take other things. We could think, in the present, we're pretty confident that octopi are pretty damn smart and have conscious experience. They're really different from us as well, but bats will work quite well. Why? So he says that the essence of beliefs that bats have experience is that there's something that it is like to be a bat. Well, what is it like to be a bat? We know that most bats perceive the external world primarily by sonar or echolocation. We might also say this about dolphins too, and other similar creatures. They're using it quite a bit. So he says that what they do is they detect reflections from objects within range of their own rapid, subtly modulated high-frequency shrieks. Their brains are designed to correlate the outgoing impulses with the subsequent echoes, and the information acquired enables bats to make precise discriminations of distance, size, shape, motion, and texture comparable to what we make by vision. So we use vision, they use echolocation. They're not the same, right? They don't yield the same sort of thing. And he says, bat sonar is not subjectively like anything that we can experience or imagine. It is not actually analogous to any sense that we possess, whether our own hearing, clearly our hearing is not echolocation, sight, touch, it's not the same. It does a similar function, but it's not the same experience for us. So he goes on and he says, right, we can't subjectively imagine it or experience it. And so this raises a general question.
All right. Would any method permit us to extrapolate to the inner life of the bat from our own case? Can we use our own experience, our own imagination, to somehow get into the mind of the bat, imaginatively, as it were? If not, maybe there's some alternative methods for understanding the subjective experience of the bat. So it's not saying we don't know it all. He's not dogmatically asserting that. He's saying, let's actually find out. Let's see. So he goes on, and he's going to say, all right, our own experience in the world of bodies and stuff like that, senses, provides the basic material for our imagination. Okay, that is sort of a commonplace within philosophy. Our imagination is largely visual, but it can also include tactile and auditory, even gustatory, and I suppose you could say odorific, or whatever the smell sense is that we take in. And we can, experience our emotional states and other things like that. So our own experience provides the basic material for our imagination. And that means that the range of our imagination is going to be limited. He says, it won't help to try to imagine one has webbing on one's arms, the way bats do. Or that you fly around at dusk and dawn catching insects in your mouth, or that you have very poor vision and perceive the surrounding world by reflected high-frequency sound signals. We can imagine that. That's not the same thing as imagining the bat's experience, though. Why? He says, insofar as I can imagine that, what am I actually imagining? I'm not imagining what it is like to be a bat. I'm imagining what it is like for me to be a bat in those relevant aspects. So take a dog, right? I can well imagine not having a very good sense of vision by comparison to human beings, but being, in a world that's full of smells and having a better hearing that can locate things, feeling the ground underneath my paws, going on all fours, all of those sorts of things. That's closer to us than a bat is. We might even imagine, what is it like to be a gorilla or an orangutan? But we can't fully imagine it. There are limitations to our capacities. We're placing ourselves into that imagined state, as he's going to say. And he says, well, that's not the question that we're actually after here. I want to know what it is like for a bat to be a bat. But if I try to imagine this, I'm restricted to the resources of my own mind, and those resources are inadequate to the task. I can't do it also by a gradual process. He says, I can't imagine additions to my present experience, or imagining segments gradually subtracted from it, or imagining some combination of additions, subtractions, and modifications. So he says, to the extent I could look and behave like a wasp or bat without changing my fundamental structure, my experiences would not be anything like the experiences of those animals. So imagine we could put on big bat wings and somehow we could fly around, which people have tried to do, but you can't actually make it work. Let's say we could. That wouldn't be the same as the experience of being a bat. So he says that even if I could by gradual degrees be transformed into a bat. So you might think about those books that kids used to buy called Animorphs, where you'd have like a human being on the cover and it would show a bunch of transitions and they turn into a rat, or they turn into a wolf, or they turn into a gecko or whatever, right? So imagine those sorts of transitions. And that might get you a little bit closer, but he says, no, nothing in my present constitution enables me to imagine what the experiences of such a future stage of myself, thus metamorphosed, would be like. The best evidence would have to come from the experiences of bats. But unfortunately, we don't have access to the experiences of bats. So he says, how can we actually extrapolate from our own case to the idea of what it's like to be a bat? Because we certainly do some of this. Think about fiction writing, or when people are engaging in animal behavior analysis and observation. They're not completely off base. Animals are not totally sealed off to us, even though we can't fully understand their experience. He says, we can actually form what he calls a schematic conception of what it is like to be a certain kind of animal. We can come up with general types of behavior and experience. So we can describe bat sonar as a form of three-dimensional forward perception. Okay, we can wrap our heads around that. Emotionally, we can believe that bats feel some versions of pain, fear, hunger, lust, may have other more familiar types of perception besides sonar when they taste things. Maybe the banana or the apple tastes similar to them as it does to us. Or when we pet the bat, it enjoys that like we enjoy caresses. That's all possible, right? But we can't actually know what it's like to be the bat in that body, knowing the world through sonar with its particular brain and makeup and its own sensations. So he says, we believe that these experiences also have, in addition to these general types, a specific subjective character. And he says this is beyond our ability to conceive. Now, Nagel is speaking for all of us human beings. Perhaps he's wrong about that. Maybe he's less imaginative than other people. But let's go with him on this. So he's going to say, what are the implications? If there is conscious life elsewhere in the universe, for example, Martians, now we don't think there are Martians, but let's say there were, then it's likely some of their experiences will not be describable, even in the most general experiential terms available to us. And he says, by the way, we run into this sort of thing when it comes to other human beings. The subjective character of the experience of a person deaf and blind from birth is not accessible to me, for example, nor presumably is mine to him. But that doesn't prevent us from believing the other's experience has a subjective character. And so he says, if anyone is inclined to deny we can believe in the existence of facts like this whose exact nature we cannot possibly conceive, he should reflect that in contemplating the bats, we're in the same position as intelligent bats or Martians would occupy if they tried to understand our own experience, right? Using visual sight, tools, all that sort of stuff. And he says the structure of their own minds might make it impossible for them to succeed. So we don't have to draw a skeptical conclusion. We don't have to say, well, we can't know anything about anything. We don't even know if bats have conscious experience or subjective experience. We have good reasons to suspect that they do, and other mammals, and perhaps other kinds of animals, birds and maybe reptiles, perhaps even various kinds of arthropods, right? And he's going to say that the fact that we cannot expect to accommodate in our language a detailed description of Martian or bat phenomenology shouldn't lead us to dismiss as meaningless the claim that bats and Martians have experiences fully comparable in richness of detail to our own. How could we get at them? It won't be through imagining our way in. It won't be by analogizing to our own experience. Perhaps there's some other, as we talked about before, some other alternative method for doing so. Or perhaps there isn't. But it's clear from what Nagel has argued that at least given the assumptions that he's making about our capacities for imagination, we can't really imagine what it is like to be a bat in many relevant aspects.